Hello, welcome back, or welcome for the first time to Leave Me Alone, the Antisocial podcast. This is season 2, which is exciting, mainly because I considered not doing it, but here we are. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast. If you don't enjoy it, also follow, just quietly, from a distance, without interacting. Today's episode is called I'm Not Depressed, I'm Just Done. And honestly, if that sentence makes you feel seen, you're in the right place. Let's start here. I'm tired of people diagnosing me. Every time I cancel plans, every time I don't reply for a day, every time I say I'm fine in a tone that clearly means please stop asking questions, suddenly it's, are you okay? You seem low. Have you thought about therapy? Is everything alright at home? Yes, everything is fine. I'm just finished. Not depressed, not spiralling, not having a breakdown, just socially bankrupt. We've somehow reached a point where being exhausted is treated like a medical mystery, as if the idea that someone might be burnt out, overstimulated, and deeply uninterested in conversations is shocking. No, some of us are just simply done. So let's talk about burnout versus depression. Now, before anyone starts typing angrily, this is not me minimising mental health. Depression is real, anxiety is real, burnout is real, but so is the experience of being an introvert in a world that won't stop talking. Burnout doesn't always look dramatic, it doesn't always look like crying on the floor. Sometimes it looks like cancelling plans you've actually wanted to go to, sitting in silence and calling it self-care, staring at your phone and thinking, I cannot emotionally afford to reply right now. And depression, that's heavier, that's deeper, that's persistent. Being done is more like, I don't have the energy to perform a personality today. There's an important difference. Social exhaustion is not a personal flaw. Some people recharge by seeing people, disguising behaviour, but fine. Others recharge by being alone, being quiet, not being perceived, not being asked follow-up questions. If one more person tells me you should push yourself more, I will push myself directly into my house and lock the door. Social exhaustion isn't laziness, it's not rudeness, it's not a cry for help. It's your brain saying, we've had enough input, please stop. And the reason why everyone keeps diagnosing you, I generally think it's because people get uncomfortable when you don't match their energy. If you're not constantly excited, available, chatty, up for plans, they assume something is wrong, because apparently the only acceptable default personality is approachable and mildly enthusiastic. Some of us are neutral, some of us are tired, some of us are deeply uninterested in small talk about nothing, and that's allowed. And the guilt of being done. The worst part is the guilt. You start thinking, am I broken? Am I miserable? Why can't I just be normal? But here's the thing. If your mood improves the moment you're alone, that's not depression, that's clarity. If the thought of cancelling plans fills you with peace, not dread, that's information. Listen to it. So, what I'm getting at, I'm antisocial, but I'm very self-aware. I don't hate people. I just don't want to engage with them constantly. Like, I love my friends, I just don't need daily updates, voice notes, or spontaneous FaceTimes. If we haven't spoken in weeks but could pick up instantly, that's my love language. Silence to me is not awkward, it's restful. The problem isn't people, it's access. Here's the thing that no one likes to say out loud. It's not that people are unbearable, it's that access to you is unlimited. At no point in human history were we meant to be reachable 24/7, emotionally available on demand, expected to reply immediately, or explain why we didn't. But now, if you don't answer a message with a socially acceptable time window, it's suspicious. What happened? Did I do something? Are you mad at me? No, I was simply offline, mentally, spiritually, socially. And somehow, that's offensive now. We live in a world where silence feels like rejection, where rest looks like avoidance, where boundaries get translated as attitude. So when you pull back, even slightly, people panic. Not because you're wrong, but because they're used to having constant access to you. Now let's move on to the unwritten rules no one agreed to. There are so many invisible rules that we're all apparently meant to follow. Reply within a reasonable time, react enthusiastically, match tones, match energy, ask follow-up questions, and explain yourself. And if you don't, you're dry, you're distant, you're off lately. No, I'm just not performing today. Not every conversation needs emojis, voice notes, a paragraph explaining my emotional state. Sometimes, yeah is enough. Sometimes, no response is intentional. And sometimes, I just don't want to continue a conversation that has no destination. And that shouldn't require an apology. Somewhere along the line, we decided that being a good friend means being constantly available, checking in daily, replying instantly, showing up to everything, never needing space. But that's not friendship, that's a subscription service. Real connection isn't measured by frequency, it's measured by safety. Can I disappear for a bit and come back without being interrogated? Can I say, I don't have the energy, without becoming a discussion? And if someone only feels secure when you're constantly providing care, that's not closeness, that's pressure. For example, let's talk about checking in, because sometimes it's care and sometimes it's a lot. There's a difference between, hey, just thinking of you, no pressure to reply, and, hey, you okay, haven't heard from you. One feels gentle, and the other feels like a wellness check. And when you're already socially exhausted, even well-meaning messages can feel heavy, not because they're bad, but because responding means explaining yourself, reassuring someone, managing their feelings, pretending you're fine enough to talk. And sometimes you don't have the energy to be reassuring. You want to be quiet without the consequence. So what I'm getting at is you don't owe an explanation for rest. This part is important. You don't owe people a detailed reason for needing space. You don't need to justify it with, I'm overwhelmed, I'm burnt out, I'm not in a great headspace. You can simply be unavailable. Rest is not something you earn after collapsing. Space is not something you request only when things are dire. You're allowed to step back before you resent everyone, before you snap, before you disappear completely. Needing space is preventative care. The problem with today's society is that we have a fear of being misunderstood. A lot of us stay overextended because we're afraid of being misread. Afraid people will think we don't care, that we're rude, we're cold, we're different lately. So we force ourselves to show up, to reply, to explain, to soften our boundaries so no one feels uncomfortable. And slowly, quietly, we burn out. If being yourself requires constant clarification, the environment might not be the problem. So being done doesn't mean you hate everyone forever. It means something needs to change. Maybe you've been overgiving, or maybe you've been too accessible. Maybe you've been saying yes when your body's screaming no. Being done is simply your system rebooting. It's your brain saying, hey, this pace isn't sustainable. And if you listen early, you don't have to crash later. If you're listening to this and thinking, okay, but I still feel bad for pulling away, that makes sense. You were probably taught that being easygoing, agreeable, and available was the right way to be. But peace doesn't come from being liked, it comes from being regulated. And the people who are meant to stay, they'll adjust. You're not doing anything wrong, you're just doing something new. And that's perfectly okay. If you're listening to this thinking, I'm not sad, I'm not hopeless, I'm just absolutely done with everyone, congratulations. You might just be an introvert with boundaries, and that's not a problem to fix. This has been the Leave Me Alone, the Antisocial podcast, Season 2. We're back, reluctantly, but constantly. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast. If it made you feel understood, even better. If it made you feel attacked, sit with that. New episodes coming soon, same energy, low effort, maximum honesty. Until next time, leave me alone.